I'm Sarah Martinez, 32, and 3 days ago I was the VP of Business Development at Technova Corp, about to close the biggest deal in company history. I was literally sitting across from the CEO of Megacorp Industries, contract pages spread between us for a $500 million partnership that would revolutionize cloud computing, when my phone buzzed. A text from my boss: "You're fired. Security will escort you out. Don't bother coming back." The room went silent as I stared at my screen, my hands trembling. But here's what my former boss didn't know. I had already quietly launched my own startup 6 months ago, and I was about to turn his biggest nightmare into my greatest victory. If you've ever been betrayed at the worst possible moment, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is just getting started. Before we jump back in, tell me where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The silence in that glass-walled conference room was deafening. David Kim, Megacorp's CEO, slowly set down his Mont Blanc pen and looked at me with genuine concern etched across his face. The mahogany table between us seemed to stretch for miles, covered with carefully prepared contract documents that represented 3 years of my life's work. "Sarah, is everything all right?" David's voice was gentle, professional, but I could hear the confusion underneath. Here we were, moments away from signing a partnership that would integrate Megacorp's massive client base with Technova's cloud infrastructure, creating a revolutionary platform that would change how Fortune 500 companies handled data management forever. I forced myself to breathe, to think clearly, despite the earthquake that had just shattered my world. The text message still glowed on my phone screen like a neon sign of betrayal. Marcus Reed, my boss and Technova's chief strategy officer, had just terminated me via text while I was literally in the process of delivering the biggest win in the company's 15-year history. "I'm sorry, David," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. "There seems to be an internal matter at Technova that needs immediate attention." David leaned back in his leather chair, his sharp business instincts clearly picking up on the tension. "Sarah, you've been our primary contact for 18 months. You know our systems, our needs, our vision better than anyone at Technova. If there's a problem..." I looked at this man who had become more than just a client over the past year and a half. David Kim had built Megacorp from a small logistics company into a global powerhouse, and he valued loyalty, integrity, and results above all else. He trusted me, and that trust had been the foundation of this entire partnership. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus had fired me to steal credit for closing this deal, but he had no idea that David Kim barely tolerated him. Every meeting Marcus had tried to insert himself into had been met with polite but clear preference for working directly with me. Marcus's pushy sales tactics and obvious desperation to impress had actually damaged his credibility with Megacorp's leadership team. "David, I need to be completely transparent with you," I said, making a decision that would change everything. "I've just been terminated from Technova, effective immediately. I'm not sure what this means for our partnership discussions, but I wanted you to hear it from me directly." His eyebrows shot up, and for a moment, the polished executive facade cracked to reveal genuine shock. "You're joking." I wish I were. I showed him the text message, watching his expression shift from surprise to something that looked remarkably like anger. "This is how they handle their most valuable team member?" David shook his head slowly. "Sarah, in all my years of business, I've never seen someone handle complex negotiations with such skill and integrity. You've anticipated our needs, addressed our concerns, and created solutions we didn't even know we needed." I felt a warmth in my chest, despite the chaos swirling around me. This was why I loved what I did, building real relationships, creating value, solving problems that mattered. "I appreciate that more than you know, David. I'm going to need to step away and figure out my next steps, but I wanted to ensure that Megacorp's interests are protected throughout this transition." As I gathered my materials, David stood and extended his hand, but instead of a goodbye handshake, he handed me his personal business card. "Sarah, whatever happens next, I want you to call me. This partnership was built on trust in you, not Technova. Don't let them take credit for your work." I walked out of that conference room with my head held high, but my mind was racing. Marcus thought he'd destroyed me, but he had no idea what was coming. 3 years ago, I walked into Technova Corp's sleek downtown office with nothing but ambition and a dog-eared copy of my employment contract. I was 29. Fresh from completing my MBA while working full-time at a smaller tech firm, and Technova represented everything I thought I wanted in a career: cutting-edge technology, Fortune 500 clients, and the promise of rapid advancement for high performers. My employment contract was straightforward. Business Development Manager, $85,000 base salary plus commission, with clear metrics for promotion to senior roles. What wasn't in that contract was any mention of Marcus Reed's fragile ego, or his talent for making other people's successes feel like personal failures. Marcus had been at Technova for 8 years when I arrived, working his way up from a sales associate to chief strategy officer through a combination of office politics and taking credit for other people's work. He was the kind of manager who smiled in meetings while mentally calculating how to position himself as the architect of every victory and the innocent victim of every setback. In my first year, I landed 3 major clients that generated over $12 million in revenue. My approach was different from the typical Technova sales strategy. Instead of pushing our existing products, I listened carefully to what clients actually needed and worked with our development team to create customized solutions. It took longer to close deals, but the contracts were bigger, more profitable, and led to long-term partnerships. Marcus took notice, but not in the way I'd hoped. Instead of recognition, I got increased scrutiny. He started requiring me to CC him on all client communications, attend additional strategy meetings that seemed designed to waste my time, and submit detailed reports on every prospect interaction. When I questioned these new requirements, he smiled his practiced corporate smile and explained that he was investing in my development. By my second year, the pattern was clear. Every successful deal I closed became a team effort led by strategic guidance from senior management. Every client relationship I built somehow required Marcus's oversight and direction. When promotion discussions came up, Marcus would acknowledge my solid contributions while emphasizing my need for continued mentorship under his leadership. The breaking point came 18 months ago when I landed the initial meeting with Megacorp. I had been cultivating a relationship with their CTO through industry conferences and mutual connections for 6 months. When David Kim agreed to explore a partnership, Marcus immediately inserted himself into the process, claiming that deals of this magnitude require C-level oversight. But David Kim saw right through Marcus's act. In our first joint meeting, Marcus spent 30 minutes pitching outdated solutions that showed he hadn't bothered to research Megacorp's actual needs. When David asked specific technical questions, Marcus deflected to me with phrases like, "Sarah handles the technical details," and "that's more in her wheelhouse." After that meeting, David started requesting to work directly with me, politely, but firmly declining Marcus's attempts to schedule executive-level strategic discussions. It was professionally humiliating for Marcus, and he blamed me for his failure to connect with our biggest potential client. The hostility became more obvious after that. Marcus started excluding me from company meetings where my deals were discussed, then criticizing me for being out of the loop on strategic decisions. He would schedule conflicting appointments during my important client calls, then express concern about my time management. When other departments praised my collaborative approach, Marcus would privately warn them about getting too dependent on any single team member. I documented everything. Every email, every meeting, every passive-aggressive comment went into a carefully organized file that painted a clear picture of systematic retaliation. I knew I was walking a tightrope, but I also knew that my work spoke for itself. What Marcus didn't realize was that his behavior was creating the very problem he was trying to prevent. I was already planning my exit strategy. 6 months ago, on a rainy Tuesday evening in my home office, I filed the incorporation documents for CloudSync Innovations LLC. The Delaware registration paperwork sat in a manila folder on my desk, official proof that I had finally stopped talking about starting my own company and actually done it. The decision wasn't made lightly. I spent months consulting with employment lawyers, reviewing my Technova contract line by line, and researching the legal boundaries of competitive activities. My non-compete clause was specific but narrow. It prevented me from soliciting Technova's existing clients or using proprietary information, but it didn't stop me from developing new technology or approaching prospects that Technova hadn't actively pursued. More importantly, I discovered that any breach of good faith by Technova, such as discrimination, retaliation, or failure to pay earned commissions, could void the entire non-compete agreement. Marcus's increasingly hostile behavior was actually building my legal case for complete freedom to compete. The technology behind CloudSync had been percolating in my mind for over a year. Every client conversation at Technova revealed the same: fundamental problems with existing cloud infrastructure. It was either too expensive for small companies or too inflexible for large enterprises. The sweet spot was a modular system that could scale seamlessly from startup to Fortune 500, with transparent pricing and genuine customization capabilities. I spent my evenings and weekends developing the core architecture, working with a brilliant developer named Alex Chen, who I'd met at a tech conference. Alex had left his senior position at Amazon Web Services because he was tired of building incremental improvements to outdated systems. He wanted to create something revolutionary, and CloudSync's vision excited him enough to join as co-founder and CTO. Our third team member was Maria Santos, a former colleague from my previous job who had become one of the most respected sales engineers in the industry. Maria had been watching Technova's treatment of me with growing concern, and when she learned about CloudSync, she quietly began planning her own exit strategy. We were incredibly careful about confidentiality and conflict of interest. CloudSync was incorporated with Alex as the majority owner to avoid any appearance that I was using Technova resources or relationships inappropriately. All development work was done on personal equipment, using Alex's home as our unofficial headquarters. We didn't approach any existing Technova clients, and we avoided any direct competition with Technova's current product lines. The breakthrough came 4 months ago, when we successfully tested our proof-of-concept system. CloudSync's modular architecture could handle the same workload as Technova's flagship platform at 40% of the cost, with deployment times measured in hours instead of weeks. More importantly, our system was designed from the ground up for the kind of complex, multi-tenant environments that companies like Megacorp needed. I knew we had something special, but I also knew that timing would be everything. We needed to perfect our technology, build our team, and establish credibility before making any public moves. Marcus's increasing hostility was actually providing the perfect cover. While he was focused on undermining my work at Technova, I was building the foundation for something that would make Technova's offerings look obsolete. The irony was delicious. Marcus thought he was protecting his territory by marginalizing me, but he was actually giving me the motivation and justification to create his worst nightmare: a direct competitor with superior technology, founded by someone who understood his clients' needs better than he did. 3 weeks ago, we received our first round of seed funding from a venture capital firm that specialized in enterprise software. The $2 million investment gave us the resources to accelerate development and begin building our sales infrastructure. We were ready to launch, but we were waiting for the right moment. Marcus had just handed us that moment on a silver platter. The email chain with HR that I'd been building over the past year read like a textbook case of workplace retaliation. Each message was carefully worded, professionally toned, and meticulously documented. A paper trail that told the story of Marcus Reed's systematic campaign to undermine my position at Technova. It started 14 months ago with a simple inquiry to Jennifer Walsh, Technova's HR director. "Hi, Jennifer. I wanted to discuss some concerns about communication patterns in recent strategy meetings. I've noticed that my contributions to the Megacorp project discussions aren't being accurately reflected in the meeting summaries that Marcus distributes to senior leadership." Jennifer's response was diplomatically non-committal. "Thanks for bringing this to my attention, Sarah. I'll make a note of your concerns and suggest that you work directly with Marcus to ensure clear communication going forward." But the problems escalated. 2 weeks later, I was back in Jennifer's inbox. "Jennifer, I need to document an incident from yesterday's client call with Megacorp." Marcus interrupted my technical explanation to correct information that was actually accurate, which confused the client and required follow-up clarification. This is the third time this month that Marcus has contradicted accurate information during my client presentations. The email chain grew longer and more detailed as Marcus's behavior became more brazen. There was the incident where he scheduled an emergency strategy meeting at the exact time of my scheduled call with Megacorp's procurement team, then criticized me for missing the meeting when I chose to honor my client commitment. There was the time he reassigned my research assistant to other projects right before a major proposal deadline, then questioned my ability to meet deadlines when I requested additional support. The most damaging incident occurred 6 months ago during Technova's quarterly all-hands meeting. Marcus was presenting the business development team's achievements to the entire company, including the executive leadership team. He spent 20 minutes discussing the strategic approach that had led to our recent wins, using slides that were clearly based on my client relationship strategies and market analysis. When he mentioned the megacorp partnership discussions, he described them as a complex enterprise sale that requires careful orchestration of multiple stakeholders and deep understanding of the client's strategic objectives. Everything he said was true. It was just that I was the one who had done all that work. During the Q&A session, CEO Patricia Williams asked specifically about the technical requirements that Megacorp had raised during negotiations. Marcus fumbled through a vague response about leveraging our core competencies to address client pain points, clearly demonstrating that he didn't understand the details of discussions he was taking credit for. I sat in the audience, watching my work being presented as Marcus's strategic vision, and made a decision. After the meeting, I sent Jennifer the most detailed email yet. Jennifer, I need to formally document my concerns about attribution of work and decision-making authority within the business development team. The presentation given today included analysis and client insights that were developed through my direct work with prospects and clients, but were presented without acknowledgement of my contributions. Jennifer's response revealed the company's real priorities. Sarah, I understand your concerns about recognition, but it's important to remember that all work done at Technova is ultimately teamwork that reflects the strategic guidance of senior leadership. I'd encourage you to focus on continuing your strong performance rather than concerns about individual attribution. That response told me everything I needed to know about Technova's culture and my future there. The company was willing to let Marcus take credit for my work as long as the results kept coming. They saw me as a replaceable resource, not a valued team member whose contributions deserved recognition. The final email in the chain was sent just 2 weeks ago, after Marcus had excluded me from a meeting with Technova's board where my megacorp proposal was being discussed for final approval. Jennifer, I'm formally requesting a review of the working relationship between Marcus Reed and myself. The pattern of exclusion from strategic discussions about deals I've developed has become untenable and is impacting my ability to serve our clients effectively. Jennifer never responded to that email. Now I understood why. The private investigators' report arrived in my email at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday, 3 weeks before Marcus fired me. The subject line was simple: Reed Investigation, Confidential Report. What I found inside those 23 pages fundamentally changed how I understood everything that had been happening at Technova. I had hired Rebecca Torres, a former FBI financial crimes investigator turned private consultant, not because I wanted to destroy Marcus, but because I needed to understand what was driving his increasingly desperate behavior. His hostility toward me had escalated beyond normal workplace politics into something that felt personal and dangerous. I needed to know what I was really dealing with. Rebecca's background check revealed a man living far beyond his means. Marcus's $180,000 salary as chief strategy officer was substantial, but it wasn't enough to support his lifestyle. The report documented a downtown penthouse apartment that cost $8,000 per month, a leased BMW that ran $1,200 monthly, and membership fees at an exclusive country club that totaled $15,000 annually. His ex-wife's alimony payments added another $4,000 per month to his expenses. But the real revelation was hidden in the financial analysis section. Rebecca had traced Marcus's credit card statements, bank records, and investment accounts through public records and financial databases. The picture that emerged was of a man drowning in debt, desperately trying to maintain an image of success while his world crumbled around him. The gambling problem started small. Occasional trips to the casino, some online poker games, sports betting that seemed harmless enough. But over the past 2 years, Marcus had lost over $300,000 in various gambling ventures. His credit cards were maxed out, his investment accounts had been liquidated, and he had taken out a second mortgage on his condo to cover his debts. More disturbing were the irregularities in his expense reports and client entertainment budgets. Rebecca had found evidence that Marcus was systematically inflating his business expenses, claiming personal meals as client entertainment and billing personal travel to company accounts. The total amount of questionable expenses over the past 18 months exceeded $75,000, but the smoking gun was in his electronic communications. Rebecca had legally obtained records showing that Marcus had been in contact with a financial advisor about liquidating assets quickly and international investment opportunities. There were inquiries about offshore banking services and consultation, calls with immigration lawyers about business opportunities in non-extradition countries. The timeline was chilling. Marcus's communications about offshore assets and international relocation had intensified dramatically over the past 6 months. exactly the period when the Megacorp deal had moved from preliminary discussions to serious negotiations. He wasn't just planning to take credit for my work, he was planning to steal his commission from the deal and disappear. The report estimated that Marcus's commission from the Megacorp partnership would be approximately $2.5 million, enough to pay off his gambling debts, cover his legal problems, and fund a comfortable retirement in a country with favorable extradition laws. All he needed was to close the deal and get his commission payout before anyone discovered the extent of his financial crimes. Suddenly, everything made sense. Marcus wasn't just threatened by my competence. He was terrified that I would discover his embezzlement before he could complete his escape plan. Every attempt to marginalize me was really an attempt to maintain control over the one deal that could save him from financial and legal ruin. The most damning piece of evidence was a recorded phone conversation between Marcus and his gambling bookie, where Marcus promised that he would have a big payout coming in the next month that would settle everything permanently. The conversation was dated just 5 days before he fired me. Rebecca's final assessment was stark. Subject appears to be planning immediate departure from current employment, following completion of major financial transaction. Recommend extreme caution in any business dealings and consideration of protective legal measures. I sat in my home office, staring at the report, and realized that I wasn't just dealing with a difficult boss, I was dealing with a desperate criminal who would do anything to protect his escape plan. The LinkedIn notification pings started within an hour of news spreading about my termination from Teknova. By the end of the day, my inbox contained over 40 messages from industry contacts, former colleagues, and clients who had heard the news and couldn't believe what they were reading. The first message came from Dr. Angela Chen, CTO at Dataflow Solutions, a company I had helped transition to Teknova's platform 2 years earlier. Sarah, just heard the news about Teknova. This is absolutely insane. You were the best business development professional I've ever worked with. Whatever you're doing next, Dataflow is interested. Then came a flood of similar messages. Robert Kim from Fusion Analytics. Teknova just lost their most valuable player. My team has been nothing but impressed with your professionalism and expertise. Let's talk about opportunities. Lisa Rodriguez from Cloudcrest Industries. Shocked to hear about your departure from Teknova. Your guidance during our platform migration was exceptional. Would love to discuss how we might work together in the future. But the message that made my heart race came from David Kim at Megacorp. Sarah, I've been thinking about our conversation this morning. The more I consider Teknova's decision, the more convinced I am that they've made a serious error in judgment. I've spoken with my board about the situation, and we're unanimous in our assessment that you were the driving force behind the partnership proposal. Would you be available for a confidential conversation tomorrow morning? Each message reinforced what I had always suspected but never fully appreciated. My reputation in the industry was built on relationships that transcended my employment at any single company. These people weren't just Teknova clients, they were my clients, and they trusted me personally. The most revealing message came from Janet Morrison, a procurement director at Teknova's biggest competitor. Sarah, our mutual connection at Megacorp, mentioned that you might be exploring new opportunities. We've been watching your work from afar and have been consistently impressed. If you're interested in a conversation about joining our enterprise solutions team, I'd love to discuss a role that would give you the autonomy and recognition you deserve. By evening, I had received 3 formal job offers, 2 consulting proposals, and 1 request to serve on an industry advisory board. The consistent theme in every message was the same. People were shocked that Teknova had let me go, and they wanted to work with me regardless of my corporate affiliation. The most gratifying message came from Michael Torres, CEO of Integrated Systems Corp., a mid-size company I had helped implement a complex cloud solution 18 months earlier. Sarah, ISC's board met an emergency session this afternoon after hearing about your situation. We've authorized me to offer you a position as VP of Strategic Partnerships at a 40% salary increase from your Teknova compensation. Your understanding of enterprise needs and ability to create innovative solutions would be invaluable to our growth strategy. But it was the message from David Kim that kept me awake that night. Sarah, I've been in business for 25 years, and I've learned to recognize exceptional talent when I see it. Teknova's loss is going to be someone else's incredible gain. The question is whether that someone else might be your own company. I'd like to discuss some possibilities that might interest you. Reading through the messages, I realized that Marcus had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of business relationships in our industry. He thought that clients belonged to Teknova, that contracts were owned by the company, and that individual relationships were interchangeable. But enterprise technology sales were built on personal trust, proven expertise, and long-term relationship development. These people weren't reaching out because they felt sorry for me. They were reaching out because they recognized value and wanted to continue working with someone they trusted. Marcus had just given them all permission to poach one of Technova's most valuable assets. My phone rang at 8:30 p.m. It was David Kim. "Sarah, I hope you don't mind me calling directly, but I wanted to have a real conversation about what happened today and what it might mean for the future." The emergency Cloud Sync team meeting convened at 7 a.m. the morning after my termination, in Alex Chen's converted garage that served as our unofficial headquarters. The space was cramped but functional. 3 workstations, a wall-mounted monitor for presentations, and a coffee machine that had become essential to our late-night development sessions. Alex was already at his computer when I arrived, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he made final adjustments to our demonstration platform. Maria Santos sat across from him, reviewing our business plan and making notes on a legal pad. The energy in the room was electric. This was the moment we had been preparing for, even though none of us had expected it to come quite like this. "Okay, team," I said, setting down my laptop and looking at my 2 co-founders. "Marcus just accelerated our timeline by about 6 months. We're no longer in stealth mode. We're launching CloudSync publicly, and we're doing it in the next 48 hours. Maria looked up from her notes. "Are we really ready for this? We've been planning a gradual market entry, building our client base slowly while we refine the technology." Alex spun around in his chair, a grin spreading across his face. "Are you kidding? We've been ready for months. Our platform can handle anything Technova's system can do, and we can do it better, faster, and cheaper." The only thing holding us back was wanting to avoid a direct confrontation with Sarah's former employer. I pulled up CloudSync's technical specifications on the main monitor. What we had built over the past 6 months was genuinely revolutionary. A cloud infrastructure platform that combined the scalability of enterprise solutions with the flexibility and cost-effectiveness that smaller companies needed. Our modular architecture allowed clients to start small and scale seamlessly, paying only for the resources they actually used rather than buying into bloated packages designed for maximum revenue extraction. "Here's what makes us different," I explained, clicking through our feature comparison chart. Technova's platform requires minimum commitments that price out smaller companies, and their enterprise solutions are so rigid that large companies can't customize them for specific needs. We've solved both problems with dynamic scaling and true modular customization. The numbers were compelling. Our cost analysis showed that companies could achieve the same functionality as Technova's premium tier for 40% less money, with deployment. Times reduced from weeks to hours. More importantly, our customer satisfaction surveys from beta testing showed 95% satisfaction rates compared to industry averages around 70%. Maria had been working on our go-to-market strategy for weeks, and she walked us through the plan. "We have 3 immediate advantages," she said, pointing to her timeline. "First, Sarah's reputation and relationships give us instant credibility with major prospects. Second, Marcus's behavior at Technova has created doubt about their stability and culture. Third, our technology actually delivers on promises that the industry has been making for years." Alex brought up our technical demonstration on his laptop. "I've been stress testing our platform all week. We can handle enterprise-level traffic loads, we have redundancy built into every system component, and our security protocols exceed industry standards." The beta clients aren't just satisfied, they're amazed. I felt a surge of pride watching my partners present their work. Alex's technical brilliance had created something that could genuinely change how companies approached cloud infrastructure. Maria's sales expertise had developed a market entry strategy that leveraged our strengths while avoiding the typical startup pitfalls. "There's something else," I said, pulling up David Kim's message from the night before. "Megacorp's CEO wants to have a conversation about working together outside of the Technova partnership. He's specifically interested in discussing whether CloudSync might be able to provide solutions that Technova couldn't." The room went silent. Alex and Maria both understood what this meant. Megacorp wasn't just a potential client, they were the client that could establish CloudSync as a major player overnight. "So what's our play?" Maria asked. I looked at my partners. These brilliant people who had believed in our vision enough to risk their careers on a startup launched from a garage. We're going to show Megacorp that the future of cloud infrastructure doesn't belong to companies like Technova that treat innovation as a marketing buzzword. It belongs to companies like us that actually build innovative solutions. The law offices of Patterson and Associates occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown, and Catherine Patterson's corner office commanded an impressive view of the city skyline. She sat across from me at a polished conference table. My Technova employment contract spread between us like evidence in a criminal trial. Sarah, I've reviewed your non-compete agreement, and I have to say, it's more restrictive than most, Catherine said, adjusting her reading glasses. But here's the interesting part. It's also more vulnerable to challenge than whoever drafted it probably realized. Catherine had been recommended by one of my LinkedIn contacts as the best employment attorney in the city, with a particular expertise in non-compete disputes and trade secret litigation. Her office walls were lined with framed articles from legal journals and photos with prominent business leaders. But what impressed me most was her direct, no-nonsense approach to complex legal issues. The key provision is Section 7.3, she continued, pointing to a paragraph in my contract. It prevents you from directly or indirectly competing with Technova's business interests for 18 months after termination. That's broad language, but it's not absolute. I leaned forward, studying the contract language I had signed 3 years earlier, without fully understanding its implications. What makes it vulnerable? Several factors, Catherine said, pulling out a legal pad covered with handwritten notes. First, the geographic scope is overly broad. It applies to any territory where Technova conducts business, which essentially means globally. Second, the definition of competing activities is vague enough to potentially prevent you from working in your field entirely. Most importantly, the agreement includes no consideration beyond your initial employment. She flipped to another page of notes. But here's where it gets interesting. Your documentation of Marcus Reed's retaliatory behavior creates grounds for arguing that Technova breached the employment relationship through constructive dismissal. If they violated their obligation to provide a harassment-free work environment, it could void the entire non-compete provision. I handed her the private investigator's report on Marcus's financial crimes. Catherine's eyebrows rose as she scanned. Through the evidence of embezzlement and fraudulent expense reporting, this changes everything, she said after reviewing the key findings. If Technova terminated you as part of covering up financial crimes or to facilitate fraud, the non-compete agreement becomes unenforceable. Courts don't protect companies that use restrictive covenants to hide illegal activity. The legal strategy became clear as Catherine explained our options. We could challenge the non-compete agreement on multiple grounds: geographic overreach, lack of consideration, constructive dismissal, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Any one of these arguments might succeed. Combined, they created an almost bulletproof defense. There's another factor, Catherine noted, reviewing CloudSync's incorporation documents. Your startup doesn't directly compete with Technova's current business model. You're targeting a different market segment with different technology. The non-compete clause would have to be interpreted extremely broadly to cover what you're actually doing. She walked me through the timeline for legal action. We can file a declaratory judgment action asking the court to rule that the non-compete agreement is unenforceable. Given the evidence of Technova's bad faith, I expect we'd prevail within 60 days. But honestly, I don't think it will come to that. Why not? Catherine smiled. Because Technova can't afford to have Marcus Reed's financial crimes exposed in public. Litigation. The moment they try to enforce this non-compete agreement, we'll file counterclaims for wrongful termination, conspiracy, and breach of fiduciary duty. Discovery in that case would reveal everything about Marcus's embezzlement and Technova's knowledge of it. I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The legal cloud that had been hanging over CloudSync's launch was dissipating, replaced by clear skies and unlimited possibilities. What do you recommend as our next step? We send Technova a formal notice that you're starting a new business, clearly delineate how it doesn't violate your restrictive covenants, and invite them to contact us if they have concerns. It's a professional way of saying try us and see what happens. As I left Catherine's office, I had one more piece of ammunition in my growing arsenal against Marcus Reed's desperate schemes. Rebecca Torres called me at 6:15 a.m. on Friday morning, her voice carrying an urgency that made me sit up straight in bed despite the early hour. Sarah, we need to meet immediately. I've found something that changes everything about Marcus Reed and Technova. Can you be at my office in an hour? Rebecca's investigative firm occupied a modest suite in a professional building across town, but her conference room was equipped with the kind of secure communication technology that government agencies used for sensitive briefings. She had prepared a comprehensive presentation that would have made FBI prosecutors proud. Detailed financial analysis, timeline correlations, and documented evidence of criminal activity spanning nearly 2 years. The embezzlement is worse than we initially discovered, Rebecca began, clicking to a spreadsheet that showed Marcus's unauthorized transactions. I've traced additional fraudulent expenses going back 24 months. The total amount stolen exceeds $280,000, not the $75,000 we initially identified. She walked me through the sophisticated scheme Marcus had developed. He had created fake vendor accounts for consulting services that were actually payments to his personal accounts. He had inflated travel expenses and pocketed the differences. Most cleverly, he had been skimming small amounts from client entertainment budgets by submitting receipts for expensive dinners that never happened while taking clients to cheaper venues. But that's not the worst part, Rebecca continued, pulling up a series of bank records. Marcus has been planning his exit strategy for over 6 months. He's been systematically moving money to offshore accounts, liquidating assets, and preparing for immediate departure from the country. The timeline was damning. Marcus had opened a bank account in the Cayman Islands 8 months ago, shortly after the megacorp negotiations began showing serious promise. He had been transferring small amounts regularly to avoid triggering federal reporting requirements, but the cumulative total exceeded $150,000. Here's where it gets really interesting, Rebecca said, displaying a series of communication records. Marcus has been in contact with a criminal defense attorney who specializes in white-collar crime and international asset protection. The attorney's notes, which I obtained through legal discovery channels, show that Marcus is planning to claim that any missing funds were actually authorized bonuses or commission advances. The audacity was breathtaking. Marcus wasn't just stealing money. He was preparing to claim that his theft was legitimate compensation that had been approved by senior management. If he could close the megacorp deal and collect his commission before the embezzlement was discovered, he planned to disappear with over $2.7 million in stolen and fraudulently obtained funds. But wait, there's more, Rebecca said with the grim satisfaction of an investigator who had uncovered the full scope of a criminal conspiracy. Technova's CFO, Patricia Williams, has been aware of irregularities in Marcus's expense reports for at least 3 months. She showed me email exchanges between Williams and Technova's accounting department, discussing concerning patterns in Marcus's submitted expenses. Williams had ordered a discreet internal audit, but had not taken any action based on the findings. The audit report, which Rebecca had obtained through a source at Technova's accounting firm, clearly documented fraudulent activity, but recommended continued monitoring rather than immediate investigation. Williams knew Marcus was stealing, but she was willing to overlook it as long as he delivered the megacorp deal, Rebecca explained. She calculated that his commission would be large enough to recover the stolen funds, and the partnership would be valuable enough to justify the risk. The final revelation was the most shocking. Rebecca had discovered that Marcus and Williams had been secretly negotiating the terms of his departure, including a plan to allow him to resign after closing the megacorp deal rather than face criminal charges for embezzlement. They were planning to let him steal $280,000 and earn a $2.5 million commission, then quietly allow him to leave the company with minimal consequences, Rebecca said. Your termination was part of that plan. They needed Marcus to be the sole credit holder for the megacorp deal to justify his massive commission payout. I sat in stunned silence, processing the implications. My firing wasn't just about Marcus's ego or his fear of being exposed. It was part of a criminal conspiracy between Marcus and Technova's senior leadership to facilitate fraud and embezzlement on a massive scale. Rebecca, this isn't just about employment law anymore. This is wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. Exactly, she nodded grimly. And you were fired because you were the one person who could prevent them from completing their scheme. David Kim answered his phone on the second ring, his voice carrying the crisp professionalism of a CEO who was accustomed to important calls at any hour. Sarah, I've been hoping you'd call. I trust you've had time to consider our conversation. From yesterday, I was sitting in my car outside Rebecca Torres's office, the private investigator's damning report still fresh in my mind. The evidence of Marcus's criminal conspiracy had crystallized my understanding of what was really at stake. Not just my career or CloudSync's future, but the integrity of a business relationship built on trust and mutual respect. David, I appreciate your confidence in me more than you know, I said, choosing my words carefully. But before we discuss any future collaboration, I need to be completely transparent about what I've discovered regarding Technova's internal situation. There was a pause, and I could almost hear David's analytical mind processing the implications of my statement. I'm listening. The partnership proposal that we've been developing isn't just being mismanaged. It's being manipulated as part of what appears to be a financial fraud scheme. I have documented evidence that Marcus Reed has been embezzling company funds and planning to use the Megacorp commission to cover his theft before leaving the country. David's sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. Sarah, those are serious allegations. Are you certain about this information? I have a private investigator's report documenting $280,000 in fraudulent expenses, offshore bank accounts, and communications with criminal defense attorneys. More importantly, I have evidence that Technova's senior leadership is aware of the theft, but plan to overlook it in exchange for closing your deal. The line went quiet for nearly 30 seconds. When David spoke again, his voice had shifted, from surprise to the controlled anger of the executive who realized he had been manipulated. This explains several things that have been troubling me about Technova's approach, he said slowly. Marcus's desperation during negotiations, the inconsistencies in their technical proposals, and the rush to finalize terms without proper due diligence review. I took a deep breath, preparing to make the pitch that would determine CloudSync's future. David, I'm calling because I believe Megacorp deserves a partnership with a company that shares your values of integrity, innovation, and long-term thinking. I'd like to propose a meeting where my team can demonstrate a solution that we believe addresses your needs more effectively than anything Technova could provide. Your team? I'm the co-founder and CEO of CloudSync Innovations, a cloud infrastructure company that we launched 6 months ago. Our technology platform offers the scalability and customization capabilities that you've been seeking, with transparent pricing and deployment timelines that are measured in hours rather than weeks. David's business instincts were immediately engaged. And you believe your solution is superior to Technova's proposal? I know it is. We've designed our platform specifically to address the limitations that large enterprises face with existing cloud infrastructure. We can provide the same functionality as Technova's premium tier at 40% lower cost, with better performance and genuine customization capabilities. Sarah, I have to ask, is this conversation happening because you're angry about being fired, or because you genuinely believe you have a better solution? It was a fair question that deserved an honest answer. Both, if I'm being completely transparent. But David, you've worked with me for 18 months. You know my approach to business, relationships. I would never propose a partnership unless I was confident that it would deliver genuine value to Megacorp. Another pause. Shorter this time. What would you need to demonstrate your capabilities? 48 hours to prepare a comprehensive presentation, and 2 hours of your time to show you what the future of cloud infrastructure actually looks like. Sarah, I'll be honest with you. The board was already having concerns about Technova's technical capabilities and Marcus's erratic behavior during negotiations. Your termination yesterday was the final red flag that convinced us to pause the partnership discussions. My heart raced. Are you saying that Megacorp has decided not to move forward with Technova? I'm saying that we've decided not to move forward with Technova, as currently constituted. Whether we move forward with CloudSync depends on what you can show us on Monday morning. He handed me his personal business card again, metaphorically speaking. Sarah, I'm giving you the opportunity to earn Megacorp's business based on merit, not politics. Don't waste it. The next 48 hours transformed Alex Chen's garage into a war room that would have impressed any Silicon Valley startup. We worked in shifts around the clock, surviving on energy drinks, takeout food, and the adrenaline rush of knowing that everything we had built was about to be tested at the highest level. Our technical demonstration had to be flawless. Alex led the development of a live platform showcase that would allow David Kim and the Megacorp board to see our system handling real enterprise workloads in real time. We created a sandbox environment that replicated Megacorp's exact technical requirements, complete with their security protocols and data compliance needs. This isn't just about showing them features, Alex explained as he fine-tuned the demonstration scripts. We need to prove that CloudSync can handle their actual business challenges better than any existing solution. Maria worked on the business presentation, crafting a narrative that would resonate with executives who cared about ROI, risk mitigation, and competitive advantage. Her slides told the story of how cloud infrastructure had evolved, why current solutions were inadequate for modern enterprises, and how CloudSync's approach represented the next generation of business technology. I focused on the strategic vision, preparing to explain not just what CloudSync could do for Megacorp today, but how our partnership could position them as leaders in their industry for the next decade. The presentation needed to demonstrate that we weren't just offering technology, we were offering transformation. By Sunday evening, we had created something extraordinary. Our demonstration showed CloudSync's platform handling complex multi-tenant environments, scaling resources dynamically based on demand, and integrating seamlessly with existing enterprise systems. The cost analysis was compelling, the technical specifications were superior, and the implementation timeline was revolutionary. We ready? Maria asked as we ran through our final rehearsal. I looked at my partners, these brilliant people who had believed in our vision enough to risk everything on a startup launched from a garage. We're not just ready, we're about to change everything. Monday. Morning arrived with the crisp energy of a day that would define our future. Megacorp's boardroom was intimidating. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a polished conference table that could seat 20 people, and wall-mounted monitors that would display our presentation to executives who controlled billions in annual revenue. David Kim introduced us to Megacorp's decision-making team: Chief Technology Officer Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Chief Financial Officer Robert Chen, Head of Operations Lisa Rodriguez, and 3 board members who represented the company's major investors. These were people who had built one of the fastest-growing companies in the logistics industry, and they were giving CloudSync 2 hours to prove we deserved their partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. 18 months ago, Megacorp approached Technova with a challenge. How do you build cloud infrastructure that can scale from handling thousands of transactions per day to millions, while maintaining security, reliability, and cost efficiency? Today, we're here to show you that the answer isn't just possible. It's already built. Alex took control of the technical demonstration, his confidence evident as he walked the board through CloudSync's architecture. Our platform handled their simulated workloads flawlessly, scaling resources up and down based on demand while maintaining consistent performance metrics. When Dr. Walsh asked about security protocols, Alex demonstrated our multi-layered encryption and access control systems that exceeded industry standards. The key differentiator, Alex explained, is our modular approach. Instead of forcing clients to buy comprehensive packages they don't need, CloudSync allows you to purchase exactly the capabilities you require and scale them independently based on your actual usage patterns. Maria presented the business case with the precision of a consultant who had spent years analyzing enterprise technology investments. Megacorp's current infrastructure costs approximately $2.8 million annually, with projected growth to $4.5 million over the next 3 years based on your expansion plans. CloudSync can provide superior performance for $1.7 million annually, with linear scaling that grows proportionally with your revenue rather than exceeding it. The board members asked penetrating questions about implementation timelines, support structures, and long-term technology roadmaps. We had prepared for every concern, backed by data from our beta testing and technical benchmarks that proved CloudSync's capabilities. But the moment that sealed our victory came when Robert Chen asked about our company's values and long-term vision. I looked around the room at these successful executives and spoke from the heart about building technology that empowered businesses rather than constraining them, creating partnerships based on mutual success rather than vendor dependence. CloudSync exists because we believe that enterprise technology should be transparent, scalable, and designed to grow with your business rather than limiting it, I said. We're not just offering you a cloud platform, we're offering you a competitive advantage that will position Megacorp as an industry leader for the next decade. David Kim leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Sarah, Alex, Maria, this presentation has exceeded every expectation we had. Your technology is superior, your business model is compelling, and your vision aligns perfectly with Megacorp's growth strategy. Dr. Walsh nodded in agreement. The technical capabilities you've demonstrated are genuinely impressive. This platform could revolutionize how we handle data processing and customer interactions. David stood up and extended his hand. CloudSync, welcome to the Megacorp family. Let's make history together. The signed letter of intent that David handed me represented more than a business contract. It was validation of everything we had built, proof that innovation and integrity could triumph over politics and corruption. Marcus Reed's world began collapsing at 10:47 a.m. on Monday, exactly 37 minutes after David Kim signed CloudSync's letter of intent. I wasn't there to witness his initial reaction, but Rebecca Torres had positioned surveillance outside Technova's offices, and the security footage she obtained told a story of desperation and panic that was almost painful to watch. The emergency board meeting at Technova was called within an hour of David Kim's phone call, informing them that Megacorp was terminating their partnership discussions. According to my sources inside the company, Marcus had burst into the conference room claiming that I had sabotaged the deal through industrial espionage and client manipulation. But Patricia Williams, Technova's CFO, had more immediate concerns than Marcus's paranoid accusations. The accounting department had completed their discreet audit of his expense reports, and the evidence of systematic fraud was undeniable. Marcus had been stealing company funds for over 2 years, and his desperate plan to cover the theft with Megacorp commission money had just evaporated. Technova's stock price began declining within hours of the news breaking. Investors who had been counting on the Megacorp partnership to drive next quarter's growth suddenly faced the reality of a company that had lost its biggest deal while discovering major internal fraud. By market close, Technova's share value had dropped by 18%, wiping out nearly $50 million in market capitalization. Marcus's attempts at damage control were pathetic and increasingly desperate. He sent frantic emails to David Kim claiming that I had stolen proprietary information and violated confidentiality agreements. He threatened legal action against CloudSync for tortious interference with Technova's business relationships. He even tried to convince Patricia Williams that the embezzlement evidence was fabricated by competitors trying to destroy Technova's reputation. But the most damaging revelation came when Technova's board demanded a complete forensic audit of the company's finances. The investigation, conducted by an independent accounting firm, uncovered not just Marcus's theft, but also Patricia Williams' knowledge of the fraud and her decision to conceal it from the board and investors. The criminal implications were staggering. Marcus had committed wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. Patricia Williams was guilty of conspiracy and fiduciary breach. Technova faced potential federal investigation for securities fraud and failure to disclose material information to investors. Marcus's final desperate act was attempting to flee the country. Security cameras at the airport captured him arguing with ticket agents about immediate flights to non-extradition countries, his usual corporate composure replaced by the wild-eyed panic of a criminal whose schemes had finally collapsed. The irony was perfect. Marcus had fired me to protect a fraudulent plan that depended on closing the Megacorp deal. Instead, he had freed me to compete for that same deal with superior technology and genuine integrity. His attempt to eliminate the threat I represented had actually created the conditions for his own destruction. Marcus appeared at CloudSync's temporary offices on Tuesday afternoon. Like a ghost from a nightmare, I thought I had already escaped. Alex's garage had been transformed into a legitimate business space overnight. We had installed professional workstations, a conference room, and security systems that included cameras at every entrance. The doorbell chimed at 3:15 p.m., and our security monitor showed Marcus standing on the front steps, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, and his face showing the strain of a man whose world was disintegrating around him. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his typically perfect hair showing signs of stress-induced neglect. "Sarah," he said when I opened the door, "we need to talk." I had been expecting this confrontation since the moment David Kim signed our partnership agreement. Marcus was desperate, cornered, and facing criminal prosecution that could result in decades in federal prison. Desperate people did unpredictable things, which was why I had security personnel positioned throughout the building and law enforcement on speed dial. "Marcus, you're not welcome here," I said calmly, keeping the door partially closed between us. "If you want to communicate with CloudSync, you can contact our attorneys." "You don't understand," he said, his voice carrying a manic edge that I had never heard before. "This isn't over. You think you've won, but you have no idea what you've done. Technova will destroy you. We'll sue for theft of trade secrets, client poaching, breach of fiduciary duty. We'll tie you up in litigation for years." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, not wanting his toxic presence to contaminate the space where my team was building something positive. "Marcus, I know about the embezzlement. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about your plan to steal commission money and flee the country. Your threats don't scare me because you have no credibility left." His face went white, then flushed, red with the rage of a man who realized his secrets had been exposed. "You hired investigators? You spied on me? That's illegal. That's harassment. Everything I know about your criminal activities was obtained through legal investigation of public records," I replied evenly. "Your financial crimes aren't secrets. They're documented facts that will be presented to federal prosecutors." Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Sarah, you don't know who you're dealing with. I have connections, resources, influence. I can make your life very difficult." "Marcus," I said, looking directly into his eyes with the calm confidence of someone who held all the cards. "You're facing federal charges for wire fraud and money laundering. Your career is over. Your reputation is destroyed. Your co-conspirators are cooperating with investigators to save themselves. You have no power left to threaten anyone." The security camera captured the moment when Marcus's facade finally cracked completely. The polished corporate executive disappeared, replaced by a desperate criminal who realized that his elaborate schemes had collapsed into complete failure. His shoulders sagged, his hands trembled, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for him. "You've destroyed me," he whispered. "No, Marcus," I replied. "You destroyed yourself. I just refused to let you destroy me too." As he walked away, defeated and broken, I realized that this confrontation represented more than just personal vindication. It was proof that integrity and competence could triumph over corruption and manipulation, that building something positive was always more powerful than tearing others down. The FBI arrest warrant arrived at Technova's offices on Thursday morning, carried by federal agents who had been investigating Marcus Reed's financial crimes for the past week. I wasn't there to see Marcus being led away in handcuffs, but the local news stations captured every moment of his perp walk. The formerly confident executive reduced to a hunched figure, trying to hide his face from cameras as he was escorted to a waiting federal vehicle. The investigation had moved with remarkable speed once Rebecca Torres presented her evidence to the Financial Crimes Division. Marcus's offshore bank accounts, fraudulent expense reports, and communications with criminal defense attorneys painted a clear picture of systematic embezzlement and conspiracy. When federal investigators obtained warrants for his electronic communications, they found additional evidence of wire fraud and money laundering that expanded the scope of his criminal liability. Patricia Williams, Technova's CFO, was arrested the same day on charges of conspiracy and securities fraud. Her attempts to conceal Marcus's theft from the board and investors had violated federal regulations and fiduciary responsibilities. The arrest warrant detailed how she had received reports of suspicious financial activity, but had chosen to suppress the information rather than investigate properly. The media coverage was extensive and damaging to Technova's reputation. Local business journals ran headlines like, "Tech Executive Arrested for Embezzlement Scheme," and "Technova Leadership Charged in Federal Fraud Investigation." Industry publications analyzed how the company's internal controls had failed so spectacularly, allowing a senior executive to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars over multiple years. For me, watching the news coverage provided a sense of vindication that went beyond personal satisfaction. Marcus had tried to destroy my career to cover up his crimes, but his own actions had ultimately led to his downfall. The justice system was working exactly as it should. Criminals were being held accountable, victims were being protected, and the truth was being revealed. The most gratifying moment came when David Kim called to express his relief that Megacorp had avoided becoming entangled in Technova's criminal scandal. "Sarah, our decision to work with CloudSync instead of Technova wasn't just good business. It was the right thing to do ethically. Your integrity saved us from becoming unwitting participants in a fraud scheme." 6 months later, I stood in the conference room of CloudSync's new headquarters, looking out at a view that rivaled any corporate office in the city. The official signing ceremony for our expanded partnership with Megacorp was about to begin, marking the culmination of a journey that had transformed my life in ways I never could have imagined. CloudSync had grown from 3 people working in a garage to a company with 45 employees, 12 major enterprise clients, and revenue projections that exceeded our most optimistic forecasts. Our success hadn't happened overnight. It was the result of countless hours of development, testing, refinement, and relationship building. But the foundation of our growth was the same principle that had guided my entire career: delivering genuine value through innovative solutions and authentic partnerships. The $500 million contract with Megacorp had been just the beginning. Word of our technology's capabilities had spread throughout the industry. leading to partnerships with companies that were looking for cloud infrastructure solutions that could scale with their growth rather than constraining it. Our client satisfaction ratings consistently exceeded 95%, and our retention rate was approaching 100%. Alex had evolved into one of the most respected CTOs in the industry, his technical vision driving innovations that kept CloudSync ahead of larger competitors. Maria had built a sales organization that prioritized long-term relationships over short-term revenue, creating a culture that reflected our company's values. Together, we had created something that was more than a business. We had built a company that proved technology could be both profitable and principled. The recognition had been overwhelming. Industry publications named me Entrepreneur of the Year and Technology Innovator to Watch. CloudSync received awards for workplace, culture, technical innovation, and business ethics. Speaking invitations poured in from conferences, universities, and professional organizations that wanted to understand how we had built such a successful company so quickly. But the most meaningful recognition came from our clients and employees. Megacorp's board had publicly credited CloudSync with enabling their expansion into new markets and improving their operational efficiency by over 30%. Our employees consistently rated CloudSync as one of the best places to work in the technology sector, citing our commitment to innovation, integrity, and work-life balance. The transformation was remarkable when I considered where I had been just months earlier. Marcus's attempt to destroy my career had actually freed me to build something far more significant than anything I could have achieved while working for someone else. His betrayal had been the catalyst for discovering my own potential as an entrepreneur and leader. As I prepared for the expanded partnership announcement, my phone buzzed with a text message that made me smile. It was from David Kim. "Sarah, thank you for proving that business success and ethical behavior aren't mutually exclusive. CloudSync has exceeded every expectation, and I'm proud to be part of your journey." Looking around at my team, our beautiful office space, and the partnership agreements that represented millions of dollars in future revenue, I realized that the best revenge against Marcus's attempt to destroy me wasn't just succeeding, it was building something positive that created value for everyone involved. The future stretched ahead with unlimited possibilities. CloudSync was preparing for our initial public offering, which would provide the capital needed for international expansion and continued innovation. We had plans to develop new product lines, enter emerging markets, and continue pushing the boundaries of what enterprise technology could accomplish. But success hadn't changed our fundamental mission. CloudSync existed to prove that technology companies could prioritize customer success over short-term profits, employee development over cost reduction, and ethical behavior over competitive advantage. We had demonstrated that doing the right thing wasn't just morally correct. It was also the most effective path to sustainable business success. 6 months ago, I had been a frustrated employee watching my boss take credit for my work, while planning to steal company funds and flee the country. Today, I was the CEO of a rapidly growing company that was changing how enterprises approached cloud infrastructure while creating meaningful careers for dozens of talented professionals. The journey from betrayal to triumph had taught me that setbacks weren't endings. They were opportunities to discover what I was really capable of achieving. Marcus had tried to limit my potential by constraining my role and stealing my contributions. Instead, he had forced me to realize that my value wasn't dependent on any single employer's recognition. If you're facing workplace betrayal, financial manipulation, or personal attacks from people who feel threatened by your competence, remember that their actions reveal their own insecurities rather than your limitations. The best response to betrayal isn't revenge. It's building something so successful that their attempts to harm you become irrelevant. Don't let anyone else's dysfunction define your potential. Take control of your own narrative. Surround yourself with people who share your values and never compromise your integrity for short-term advantage. Success built on principle lasts longer and feels better than success achieved through manipulation or deception. Share your own stories of overcoming workplace betrayal in the comments below. Let's support each other in building careers and companies that prove integrity and innovation can triumph over politics and corruption.